Hi class, in this recording we're going to focus on the gonads, particularly the male and female sex glands. And as we're looking at the sex glands, the male and female gonads, that we are going to have two, one for each of the sexes. We have the ovaries for the female gonads, and then we have the testes for the male gonads. And they're diverse. They're both endocrine and exocrine in function. When we say exocrine, we mean that they're going to secrete something that leaves the body. In this instance, ovaries secrete eggs, and testes secrete sperm. And when we say endocrine, the endocrine functions of these cells is that they are going to secrete hormones that are going to act primarily as steroids. As we look at those ovarian hormones, we have estradiol, progesterone, and inhibin. These hormones are going to play a key role in regulating the woman's monthly cycle, menstrual cycle, and also helping to regulate pregnancy. As we look at the testicles, the hormones most people focus on, and that I focus on primarily with the testicles, are going to be testosterone, its namesake, and also inhibin as well. And we'll focus primarily on inhibin when we get to the male reproductive system in biology 314. It is worth emphasizing, though, that testicular hormones include miscellaneous hodgepodge of weaker androgens and estrogen. Yes, testicles make estrogen, not in the quantities that the ovaries do, but it is worth mentioning that there are low levels of estrogen secreted by the testicles. As we look at an ovary, the female gonad, shown right here, and as we're zooming in on a mature follicle or Graafian follicle, we can see the histology here. Here is that mature follicle. And as we're looking at that mature follicle, it's going to have some cells around the outside encapsulating the secondary oocyte or egg, which is waiting to be ovulated. Within the follicle before ovulation, we have theca cells. So those theca cells are going to be around the outer perimeter. And as we look at the theca cells, I'm going to go ahead and color them green, bright red. And they're shown here in the outer perimeter of the follicle. Those theca cells are going to synthesize a chemical compound known as androstenedione. And after synthesizing that androstenedione, the androstenedione synthesized by the theca cells is primarily going to be converted to estradiol. And this conversion to estradiol is going to occur by the granulosa cells. So then we have the granulosa cells here being outlined in green. Let me try that again here. So we have one side, and then I'm going to swirl around for the next pass. This band of cells on the outer perimeter, deep to the theca cells, is the granulosa cells. And these granulosa cells are responsible for taking this androstenedione and converting it into estradiol. Estradiol is the most common, or the most potent of the three forms of estrogen present in the human body. After ovulation, these theca cells and these granulosa cells are going to remain, but they'll be converted into a structure known as the corpus luteum, or the yellow scar. And the corpus luteum is then going to progress by secreting progesterone in addition to the estradiol that was initially secreting. As the corpus luteum converts and changes, it's also going from the follicle, it's also going to start to secrete a hormone known as inhibin. And this inhibin is going to act on the female's hypothalamus and anterior pituitary gland to help regulate the hormones of the menstrual cycle. Now, as we're looking at estradiol and progesterone in more detail, these two hormones get a lot of press time. They get a lot of talk because they're going to help emphasize the development of the female reproductive system, both primary and secondary sex characteristics. They help to regulate the menstrual cycle, sustain the woman during pregnancy, and in particular, with the progesterone, help to prepare the mammary glands for lactation. Now, as we look at inhibin, inhibin is going to be released during the second half or the second 2 weeks of the woman's monthly cycle. And in this situation, we find that inhibin is going to suppress the release of follicle stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary gland. If inhibin suppresses follicle stimulating hormone to be released from the anterior pituitary gland, that's going to down-regulate the activity on the ovary. In other words, the ovary is not likely to stimulate the growth of another follicle immediately after a follicle has ovulated. So we're going to have some timing of the monthly cycle. Hopefully, or usually we should say there's one follicle per cycle that ovulates. As we look at the testes are going to have very tiny tubes, microscopic tubes known as seminiferous tubules. Here is a seminiferous tubule being outlined in green. And as we look at the seminiferous tubule, this is the tube that makes the sperm. For the male gonads, this is where a lot of the action is at. And within the tubes, there's a layer of cells along the very outer edge, known as the Testicular or Sertoli cells. These are the cells that are going to help to maintain the sperm as the sperm develop within this tube. Sperm are going to be secreted into the lumen or deposited into the lumen of the seminiferous tubule, where I just drew a green X. And from that lumen, the sperm will travel to the epididymis, and from the epididymis through the spermatic tube or ductus deferens. It's also worth mentioning that there are some interstitial cells in between seminiferous tubules. These globs of cells, these interstitial cells, are also known as Leydig cells, and these are the cells that are responsible for producing testosterone. So, yes, testosterone made by the interstitial cells nestled in between our seminiferous tubules. And as we're looking at the testosterone is going to stimulate the development of male reproductive system characteristics in the fetus and the adolescent. So while we are in utero, a wash of testosterone pushes the body down the male developmental pathway for the male phenotype. And then during adolescence, another wash of testosterone is going to cause the development of secondary male sex characteristics and increase the male libido or male sex drive. Testosterone also is going to serve to sustain sperm production. So as we have testosterone in the male's body, testosterone is going to act on the germ cells within the seminiferous tubules to keep those germ cells reproducing and dividing to make more sperm. We also have inhibin coming from the male's reproductive glands, the male gonads, and that inhibin comes from a special kind of cell known as the Nurse cell, shown here with the lighter colored nuclei. And as we look at these Nurse cells release the inhibin from the male gonads, and that inhibin is going to downregulate follicle stimulating hormone secretion, and that is going to downregulate the sperm production and the Leydig cell activation. That's all we have for our hormones of the gonads, male and female reproductive system, and this is really a crash course. If you want to learn more about those hormones in more detail, we'll do that when we get to the chapters on the male and female reproductive systems next semester. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the course discussion board or to shoot me an email, and happy studies.